influencer brief is probably one of the most important things that you can do when starting with influencer marketing. And having a good brief can literally make or break your collaboration, because the brief is the place where we kind of relay everything that needs to happen for the collaboration to be successful. So what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to show you how you can create a really, really good influencer brief in just 30 minutes. I have a template, I have a checklist, they're all free, and I'm going to walk you through the steps that I usually take to create a brief for a brand really, really quickly. The brief is that part of the collaboration that sets the entire tone. So you're going into a mutual agreement, and every single side needs to know what they need to do for that agreement to have a successful and happy outcome, but also what is the process? What are the steps that we're actually going to take in order to go through this collaboration and make it to all the way to the end? The first section of the brief should always be used to set up very clear expectations for both sides. So that's where we include the goals of this campaign or activation. We include how we measure success. We make it really, really clear on the KPIs, what kind of insights we'll be looking at, what kind of targeted audience do we want to reach, what kind of messaging should the campaign have, and all that. Especially when it comes to defining the success of the campaign, that is one very, very crucial step that I do not want you to skip, because that tells the influencer this is the outcome that we want. So based on that, the influencer knows how to adjust their content, how to adjust their placement, so that they can reach that specific outcome. This is the part where we also outline or break down any deliverables that the influencer has to provide, when, how, and all that. So a quick breakdown of each type of content, if you are negotiating for multiple types of content, platforms where the content has to go cross-posting. Also, in this section, we also give like very clear instructions that are linked to how we're going to measure performance. So we give very clear instructions about how to use UTMs, how to use codes, what type of codes to use, right? This is where you put the code to use, any type of tracking that you have for performance, hashtags, brand mentions, all of that has to go in this section. Now, the second section is the content guardrails. And the content, this is why I call them guardrails, because when you are creating a brief, if you want it to be a really good brief, and if you want to collaborate with someone and not suffocate them with too many creative direction, but also not let them loose on the world, to say so, you have to find kind of like a middle ground that not only gives you a little bit of say into how the content looks, feels like, and all that, but also gives the influencer the freedom to experiment, to have fun, to relay the messaging through their own unique POV. You can do this in different ways. You can make a bullet list of do's and don'ts. I personally don't really like the do's and don'ts. Instead, what I like to do is I like to use specific examples of content that the brand really, really likes, or they can be specific content from competitors. They can be specific content from other influencers like that created content on the same niche, or for similar products that the brand really, really likes, or that we would also like to have. And then describe what we like about them. Like, what is it that we like about them from a content style perspective, from a messaging perspective, and all that. So when you do that, you're kind of like gently nudging the creator into that specific direction, and they'll be able, if you give like 2-3 examples, they'll be able to quickly go over those and quickly identify like what is the common ground of all these, but also have enough diversity to choose and say, that's my style, that's not my style, but that I can do as well, right? Now, this leads me to the third section of the brief, and I will show you a brief template as well, so we can walk through it. This is where we're supporting the creative process of the influencer. So this is why I said I don't really like using the do's and don'ts, but what I like to use is I like to use content prompts. So you're giving the influencer some kind of unique angles or unique emotions or stories or situations that they can frame the content around. You can give them leading questions, and I will show you specific examples of leading questions, basically asking them to answer questions with their content. Like I mentioned before, the most important thing that you can do for the creator and at this stage is to give them a good understanding of what the brand is about, give them a good understanding of what they need to do to get a successful outcome for the collaboration, and give them enough space to create something that looks authentic, that feels right, and that also brings value to the viewer. This is a quick checklist that I use for every single brief I create, and I'm going to walk you through it. The first one is the goal. Obviously, that should be front and center at all times. Timeline. This is if the content has to go on a specific timeline, or you want to be specific on when the content is delivered, since signing the contract or since a starting date, all of that. That should also be in your contract, by the way, but it's good to include it in the brief as well for, reinforcement of the importance of that. The content guidelines that we talked about, right? Like being specific about, content requirements. You can go, from formatting to visual guidelines to talking points, creative direction, all that we talked about goes up in here. The targeted audience. Now, this is something that you can include or you can leave out. Obviously, if you are working with that specific influencer, the assumption is that you've vetted their audience and you know that they have a target audience. But if, for example, you have an influencer that has mixed content and they could have like audience with different interests, for example, someone that does lifestyle videos but also does like a big chunk of parenting videos, and you want to connect specifically with the parenting interested audience, then you can say that. The content review process, again, because if you are under a specific timeline, you cannot take like 4 days to review the content. So you're also holding yourself against that standard and say, okay, I'm committing to reviewing this content in 24 hours since submission. And campaign offer, obviously, that's related to the tracking. So if you're offering them an UTM or code, or if your campaign, as you see in my brief, the campaign is a limited offer, so influencers, have a higher chance of success of converting people if they mention that it's a limited offer. That goes in here. You can also include a company short intro or description. I would keep this section very, very short, or if you want to go longer and if you want to talk about, if you want to immerse the influencer more in the universe of your brand, you can do a full slide, or you can attach like a separate page that is just about your company. I would only include this if it's very, very relevant to the product and to the solution. Not necessarily ask the influencer to, give your entire company story in their content, because that's not going to be relevant for the viewer. And I also like to add leading questions. And leading questions are, like I said, guiding content creation to answer questions that are frequent and highly relevant to your ICP. ICP means ideal customer persona. So who is the customer that is viewing this content, basically. Now I'm going to take you to the content creation brief. This is I'm going to be very, very quick because this is pretty much it. So as you can see, I've used a document in here. If you want to create something more visual, more exciting, you can go online. There are dozens of good templates out there. I went on Canva and I found a bunch of really, really cute templates that you can. I've created this brief for a winter leggings brand that wants to promote their new launch. And I have included a campaign description, right? So an example, the campaign goal, again, is to boost sales. I'm very, very clear on what is the goal, what is the offer for this campaign, and I'm also including the target audience right below, so they know who is this for, like who am I addressing this content specifically for. And I'm also specific in there, right? I'm talking about people passionate about running marathons. They're looking for affordable and size inclusive sportwear. They also value any gear that helps them slightly improve performance. So I'm very, very specific. This because I've done my research and I know who are the people that I'm addressing the solution to. Now, the content guidelines and requirements, again, I like to use bullet points. I broke down the types of content that I want, like the deliverables, and I also gave like a few content guidelines. So I want all the focus to be around the fact that these leggings are comfortable, they're insulated, they improve your performance while running, and they're highly functional in cold weather. So these are the leading questions that I was talking about in this section. So try honestly answering any of these questions with your content. So these are questions that, as you can see, when I answer them, they can directly turn into content. So what's the feature that Solver has the biggest potential to solve a problem for you or someone in your audience? What's the feature you're most excited about? What's the feature you feel you recommend the most? What would be the first thing you tell someone close about the leggings? This is to kind of get those creative juices running, because what happens with creative people, it's not the lack of ideas that stumps creative people, it's actually having way too many ideas. So I use guiding questions to give them like some guidance and some structure on like what type of content, what should I do my content about, right? What's the feature you're most excited about? It could just be the simple fact that the leggings, when you turn them inside out, they're really fluffy and very soft and very comfortable, and that's just the feature that excites them the most. That is great. That can be turned into great content that sells people on the leggings. The next is, I'm again, like I said, very detailed about the content review process, and also reiterating the timelines and being very specific that this is the timeline. But that is pretty much it. Like, it's 2 pages of briefing that someone can read in a maximum of 10 minutes, and they can, understand everything that they need to do. Last thing I want to mention before ending this video is ask for feedback. So when you send an influencer a brief, ask them for feedback. Did you like this? Is there anything else we can add? Do you have any examples that you've seen maybe from other companies that you really, really loved? You don't have to share that, obviously, because that's, confidential information, but you can just give like a few pointers. Did it actually support you in the content creation? Was it clear enough? Did you want to see something else? Does it require more visuals? Is it boring? Did it take you too long to open it, to read it? All that. Because what that feedback is invaluable because it's going to help you create the perfect brief for your influencers. And when you have a brief that truly excites influencers and that they look at it and they're like, oh wow, this is so good. I know exactly what to do now. It just makes everyone happy. So this is pretty much it. This is how you can create an influencer brief from 0 to 100 in, I think, less than 30 minutes. I think it would take you maybe like 20 minutes to write it down and gather all the data and put it in a brief. I hope you like this. If you have any comments, leave them in the description down below. Subscribe to the channel if you like influencer marketing stuff. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!